To be honest with you, there could be better titles for this piece. Glorious Day, the Glorious 12th, but it's neither of those. It's a glorious farewell, and it's farewell to this, 50033. There we go, that sounded all right, didn't it? Should do. There's nothing wrong with that engine. It could probably still do 100 miles an hour on the main line. So, why are we saying farewell to glorious? Because the National Railway Museum are moving it to Swindon, and Swindon is a static museum, and that means glorious will probably never, ever run again. Go. This is the reason for the old tie today. Been invited onto the former Great Western Inspection Saloon, and with me is Richard Tuplin from the North Yorkshire Moors Railway, the diesel events coordinator. It's a bit of a strange day for you, isn't it? On the one hand, you've got quite nice events, but on the other hand, we're saying goodbye to, well, what is a perfectly good locomotive?
It is. It's very much a mixed emotions today. The locomotive is fully working. It's part of the national collection, and she'll be leaving the Railway Week on Tuesday to go down to the Museum of the Great Western Railway at Swindon. So it's quite a sad event in one way.
How long have you had the locomotive here?
We brought it in April of this year. We're now in August. So
it's a popular class of locomotive, isn't it? I mean, we've seen it today. Just, you know, the crowds that have been flocking around her as she's pulled into stations and what have you.
Yeah, it's been quite remarkable today. We expected people to come and look at the locomotive right behind it, but the crowds that we've had at Goatland and Bromont before we left, I think have exceeded our expectations, certainly. And it's nice to see that people have actually come out to, in one sense, say goodbye, but in the other day to have a good day out and have a ride behind the locomotive and photograph it.
I mean, it also goes to prove, doesn't it, Richard, that when it comes to railways, it's not all steam.
This is it. I mean, the North Yorkshire Moors Railway as a whole runs a steam service for most of the year. On summer Saturdays and special events like this, when we get the diesels out, it's nice to see that is, you know, passengers come specifically for the diesels in some cases, and it's nice to see that they don't differentiate.
50.033 glorious. Has it been a glorious career?
The locomotive's been a hard work locomotive. She was built in the mid to late 1960s at Newtonley Willers in Lancashire for the West Coast Main Line between Crewe and Glasgow before the line was electrified. When the electrification went through and went live and they had the new electrics, there was no use for the locos anymore, so they moved them down to the western region, and she's 33, spent the rest of her life working out of Paddington and working out of Waterloo on the southern region, mainly to places such as Salisbury and Exeter and Plymouth, until she was retired in the early to mid 1990s, and in the case of number 33 was handed to the National Railway Museum.
Do you know, I feel a bit like a chat show host today. Joining me now in hospitality is a familiar friend, well, to me, Murray Brown, who's the editor of Rail Express, and with his other hats is also the chairman of the North Yorkshire Moors Railway.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Parkinson.
Thank you very
Am I
much.
allowed to touch your knee?
Don't, never touch the knee. Murray, it's an interesting quirk of coincidence, really, all of this. Glorious here today, you being editor of Rail Express and chairman of the North Yorkshire Moors Railway, because the North Yorkshire Moors Railway was, I believe, the first preserved railway to have a diesel gala, wasn't it?
I believe you're correct. Way back in the early 1980s, it was first mooted, and the management, of course, shock horror. Who on earth's interested in diesels? And yet, we did one, and it's now copied all over the country. And the Moors has always had one of the top diesel galas of each year.
So there's a whole generation out there. I'm one of them. I guess we're 45, sort of maybe top level, who've got interested in railways and never ever seen a steam engine working in proper mainline action. For us, it is diesels. And yet there seems to be a curious policy by the National Railway Museum, and I'm choosing my words carefully here, to not really feature modern motive power in the museum. And I think Glorious here is a good example of that sort of policy. Here, I mean, I feel quite annoyed about this. I wonder what your feelings are. Here's a perfectly good locomotive. It can run. It could probably still do 100 miles an hour on the main line, and yet we're going to put it in a museum in Swindon. That just seems a bit of a weird decision to me.
It's certainly raised a few eyebrows with the enthusiast fraternity, because here you have a perfectly good working locomotive in effect being stuffed, and there are numerous class 50 locomotives which at the end of the day will not run again. They just need too much work doing, so one of those would have been far more preferable if it was just going to be a cosmetic exhibit rather than put this fine machine into mothballs. But there may be a glimmer of hope, because only a few days before today's run we were asked, rather than drain the locomotive completely of fuel oil and lubricating oil, they've actually asked to keep the engine oil in the loco. Now this is a good sign, because it means that it's not going to seize, and if they bar the engine over, who knows, if it's kept in a dry environment, which it should be, the batteries are kept well charged, because a loco's batteries are £3,000 worth, one day that could run again. So it's looking good.
There you go then, the final run of 50033 glorious. Was it glorious? Well, wasn't bad. Wasn't 100 miles an hour, but still, nevertheless, it had its moments. What are they going to do with it now? Well, they're going to stick it in a museum, build 4 brick walls around it. Is that the right thing to do with a fighting fit locomotive? Something that's still capable of 100 miles an hour? I don't know, does it make sense to you?